If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that means it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me this week is my own personal Vanguard. It's Tom. How you doing, Tom?
You're damn right.
See, you can be good things too, Tom. Night. You are an oversized Chaos Knight on a demonic mount. I'm sure you'll have plenty to say about that when we get to it.
Yeah,
later.
My 45 millimeter height, feeling pretty good about it.
Also joining us, of course, is a man who needs very little introduction. It's Ant from the Sustainable Center. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm just oversized. I'm not the Chaos Knight part.
Very good. All right. Well, then it's three big egos on one show. So prepare yourselves, everyone. Here we go. So let's get right into the news, shall we? So Tom, take us through it. What do we got?
Oh shit! I got a job to do, don't I?
Oh my God, that's right. You have something to actually do in this show.
Oh, okay. So Archaon pre-order went up as expected, and the model is damn beautiful. I don't know. It's
grown on you because originally you were like, I don't know, and now you're on board.
Isn't it like $100 million?
It is. Yeah. Well, you can. I mean, it's the cost of like, let's say, a car payment. That seems like a fair trade. I don't really need a car.
I just won't drive this month.
Exactly.
It'll be good.
Well, it's big enough you can actually just fly him around, so it's actually quite a good deal.
How big is it?
It is more than 12 inches tall.
Like a basketball?
How big? I don't know.
No, a basketball's only like 12 to 14 inches. Like, no, we're talking like...
Yes, he's a basketball tall then.
Yeah, like he's big. Yeah, there are no other minis that GW has released like him. Like, Nagash's staff comes up to, like, his chest.
I'm curious how big the box is that they ship him in.
Yeah, he's got to be huge. I know they had a picture of, like, Manfred staring him down on the website, and so, like, if this is him, if this is Archaon, Manfred's base was at his, like, upper chest, and they were at equal height, like, on his Mortark, like, or whatever the heck it's called. His Mor thing, whatever. His flying skeletal cat. So he's real big.
Batcat.
Whatever it is. Batcat, yes. Yeah, he's huge. It's GW doing what GW does. I mean, that's what it is. You make a model big enough and crazy enough, you can charge what you want for it, I guess.
And let's be honest, that model's not about selling models.
No, it's about putting your flag in the sand, right? And
yeah,
saying,
I mean, they're just swinging. They're swinging their D around. Like, that's what's going on here. Like,
sure.
They're like, because other model companies generally can't do this. They can't waste the money to put out molds like this. You know, that they're only going to sell, like, they're going to sell a bunch of models, of course. But they're not, I mean, this is not going to be a hot ticket item.
Do you think I think they priced it high enough that they're expecting to sell a low quantity. I mean, this can't be going after their whole consumer base.
No.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, they set it accordingly, right? They knew this was a lower sales on the Spectrum thing. They're not looking to sell these like they're hoping to sell Skinks or your average Stormcast character clan pack or something.
I mean, this is the top end of the Forge, the Warhammer Forge model line. Like the Tamerkan, like on Toad Dragon is like 180, 165s, you know, in this price range.
Yeah.
So this is, I mean, these are Forge World prices.
Is this the most expensive GW sold, like non-Forge World sold model? Because I'm amazed they would do it for fantasy.
No, Smog wasn't Smog $500?
Yeah, I mean Smog is more correct, but I don't know if he really counts. Like
I wouldn't count Smog. I forgot even Smog existed.
I really feel like he doesn't count. He was more like some kind of weird special edition thing, right?
True. It's true.
Yeah, I mean, well, the Titans are more. Like the Warlord Titans or whatever out of 40K.
Well, those are Forge World though.
Right.
So non-Forge World. I mean, normally anything that's not 40K doesn't get this level of attention.
Right.
So I'm just amazed that they did this, and it's not a mechanical dragon with corn riding it or something.
So they could cross-sell it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not going to sell. I mean, like, it's a really interesting thing because they're obviously, like, they're not selling it to 40K, and they're not selling more than one per Chaos Army, right? Like this.
You would never buy two of these, no.
You know where you sell this to? Every store. If I owned a store, this goes in the case in the front.
Yep.
Or the prominent, like that's what I buy it for, and be like, I sell awesome shit like this.
Yeah, this is a flagship item. Like this is a. Yeah, I mean, this is a spearhead.
Oh, sure, yeah. If I walk in, if I don't know what a thing is, but I walk in, I see that thing, I want to know more about this. What is this game that has this thing? Like, I've asked about in minis games before, and I'm, as a wargamer, when I saw cool minis, right, that were in the case painted at the store, this would definitely be one that got people asking questions.
It's like the jewels in the front of a really high-end jewelry store that nobody buys because they can't afford it, right? That's what this is.
Yep. And it's pretty beautiful. And so as his Vanguard, they decided to equally price some some significant models to lead the way.
So the Vanguard, yes, as I referenced here, we'll share up here.
Yep, give me some photos.
We can see these things. There you go. Can you see that okay?
Yes. Now, this is somebody's attempt to create the scale comparison.
Yes. This is Jeff Egan, friend of the show.
And Jeff, let me just say, I don't know if that's an accurate. Like, I know that you're trying to just do the scale stuff, but if you look at like that model, the new model, they are about the height of the Dracula, like the mounted Stormguard guy in the box set, and I don't know if that scale looks appropriate.
What are they priced at? It's 3 in a box, right?
3 in a box, yep, for 100.
100 US.
So they're each basically characters, is what it's boiling down to. I mean, you're like, the level of detail here is admittedly amazing, but you're buying 3 $33 clam pack characters. They just happen to all be in a box. I mean, that's really what's happening.
Yeah, and the question is what is the scale? Like, is that on just the normal, like, is that the 96 mil base, or is it?
I mean, bare mins, that guy's on the 75 by 46 oval.
Yeah.
Which is one size down from what the Lord on Dracot's on. He's on the 92.
Right.
I wonder how this stacks up to like a Skull Crusher.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's a really good question. Like, how big is this compared to a Skull Crusher, right? Because you can get, what, 6 Skull Crushers for 100, I think?
Yep.
A little bit, yeah. Close enough.
Yeah. So,
yeah, like, that's their new box, right? Like, that's the bundle.
Correct, yeah, that's the mighty, whatever, mighty Skull Crushers or something. It's 6 of them for $100.
Yeah. You can also field these guys, like, 1 to a unit as well. So, I mean, that should probably be noted. Like, you don't drop them in 3s. You can drop them in 1 up to however many else you want to drop.
Did they release stats?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Hey, great question.
Yeah. Are they even remotely? I mean, I would have no idea, but are they even remotely viable in the game?
They're bonkers. They're ogres with a 3-up save, and a 4-up ward save.
How many wounds?
5.
Yes, they are 5 wound each. I mean, they're, like I said, they're all characters.
Yeah. They are the stats of a hero without actually having the hero keyword.
Yep. They are very impressive. They work with Archaon, which I think is funny because it's clear that they're like, there's like 2 references to Archaon on their.
Do you not have the war scroll?
I do, yeah. I'm sorry. I was just bringing it up. I realized I had it in a different place. Uno memento. Yeah, I mean, they're obviously pretty cool dudes. All right, now we will reshare. Here we go. Share. There we are. I apologize, everyone, that I wasn't as prepared as I should have been. There you go. 10-inch move, 5 wounds, 3-up save, 3 different weapon choices. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to dig too deep into them, but clearly they're, if you look over here, 1 Archaon reference, 2 Archaon references. Like, they're clearly saying, hey, if you're in for a penny, why not go in for a pound, right?
Yeah.
Well, at 5 wounds, too, I think a lot of the balancing people try to do to Age of Sigmar to make it competitive is wound-based, and 5 wounds doesn't seem like a high tax.
I mean, it's 2 more than a normal Chaos Knight, right, which isn't huge. Now, as we'll touch on later, new Mo comp came out today, new Clash of Swords comp, and these guys are 1 for 1. Like, that is to say, 1 pool choice out of your 30 in standard Clash of Swords pool selection. So 1 of your 30 pool choices is 1 of these knights.
And is that a GW-based system?
GW doesn't have. We can't say that. They have not created a uniform system. They seem to have a system coming out right now, and we'll talk about that in the next news piece. But no, MoComp is not.
Okay. Yeah, It's just for the Clash of Swords big UK tournament, and it's pretty good. I really like Clash of Swords. He does some pretty simple rules cleanups and provides just a simple point sort of cost that's like 1 to 4 usually for almost everything. And your pool is 30, and you have to put down up to 20 in any given match. So you have a sideboard every match.
I like that.
Yeah. And so these guys are 1 for 1, and most siege is between 1 and 1.5 each. So like this is the equivalent would be dropping like the Elven like Eagle Claw Ballista, which could basically one round this guy at range. If he failed to save, of course.
So there you go, Vanguard.
Yeah.
Very fun, very big, and yeah, they're 3 for $100. That was the other one I had here. There's your pricing. Also got our new Battle Tome.
That's not terrible if you're thinking $80 with discount.
Yeah, and like a lot of people are bitching about the price, but the reality is that like you're getting 3 of these guys, and they're the size of like small like kitty cat. Like it seems like they're the size like bigger than Blood Crushers, like the Dracoloth Rider guys. So you're talking like they're each would be on roughly a Chariot base length base if they're on the 92s. So these are not small miniatures. Like I don't know who is trying to equate these to like even Blood Crushers. I mean these aren't. Yeah, so and you're getting 3 of them.
And here's what I'll say: it's all upside, I think, really, from my perspective, because like if you like the models enough to get them, and now you've got some sweet models. If you don't, they're not that different from normal Chaos Knights. That is to say, like just convert up some Chaos Knights. It's your thing with the Drendel Knights or whatever, Ant, right? Like you wanted some good foot-based knights, and so boom, made it happen, right? Just the existence of the unit gave you a new modeling option, right?
Right, and I don't think that the Age of Sigmar community is necessarily going, win at all costs, hardcore, lots of tournaments. That's not what they're conveying. It's not a system built around that. So it's really about, do you like this model? Then put it on the board. Right. I mean, it's about putting pretty toys on round bases on the board. That's what the game's about.
I do not disagree. All right, what's our next news item there, Tom?
So GW released an advent calendar, like a digital advent calendar thing, for both 40K and Age of Sigmar, and it is a $76 purchase for the bundle, or you can buy them each for $5 a piece. And they're releasing each thing. Like you get a digital book, like a mini book or whatever, every day from now till Christmas.
Yep. And the first one of which was.
And the first one of which was the Call of Chaos. Do you have that?
I don't have it. I don't have any.
So it's half and half. Like it alternates every other day between campaign stuff and between short stories. Okay, and this is all based on Chaos. But what it is it's a warband system where you are a Chaos warband leader and you are trying to achieve demonhood. And so you randomly generate a warband and play matches and level up and gain additional gifts until you finally achieve your Demon Lord status as your Chaos Lord.
Yep. So to get at what you're saying, Tom, beating around the bush with, is it's Mordheim Chaos Champion Edition.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's exactly what it is. And they are releasing it in this 12 packet bundle. I was really tempted to buy the first one just to get an idea of what it looks like. I haven't mustered up the energy or effort to create a Black Library account yet. But it looks like they have a system of randomly determining warband size. So you roll on a chart and you get one monster roll, and then you get some infantry roll, and you get some monster.
They said you can also just choose.
Yeah.
They said you can choose or randomly roll it. Yes.
Got it. And it looks like an interesting system. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's good stuff. It's good of them to throw out more stuff like that, and it shows what we've been saying is that you can just bolt on all these other systems onto AoS, right?
Yeah, and this is an official system. This is part of the official rules now. It's a rules expansion that you have to buy, but it's out there.
Yep. And the other thing I will point out with that is that the Advent calendar also has a new video every day for like, and they're doing a lot of different painting videos. So people who are looking to do some unusual painting stuff or want to see more of how the heavy metal team works, like one of the very first days they did painting white, like painting true white, which I know a lot of people find very challenging. Well, boom, there you go. Warhammer TV's got your video for you. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yep.
All right, what else we got?
Next week we're looking at the Tzeentch Sorcerer release, so looks like it'll be a caster on a disc. It sounds like it's a named guy, like a guy specifically associated with Archaon, which is pretty sweet. And it looks like the Archaon Everchosen book is releasing next week. So the Everchosen is going to be the name of the faction, it sounds like, for Archaon and his knights, and it sounds like he at least has a Tzeentch like disc caster lord that runs around with their group, as well as probably a bunch of undivided stuff. So what would be in like the Warriors of Chaos, Slaves of Darkness lists. It looks like all the books come with transfer sheets for the Force as well.
Yeah, which I'm trying to figure out where those go, but hey, I love stickers.
Sure.
Who doesn't love stickers?
What else? Nova Open 2016. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure. So the Nova Open 2016's got a bunch of cool tournaments. They also have a big Age of Sigmar tournament. So if you are looking for some Age of Sigmar action, they got a big narrative campaign thing going on, and it's all using that Clash of Swords comp we mentioned earlier, which did update to 1.3. I'll throw a link down below where everybody can go check it out. But Mo works really hard, and there's a lot of good feedback on that. So if you're looking for something like that, some structure to that AoS or a tournament thing, that's a very good place to start.
Absolutely.
And go check out the Nova Open because it's awesome.
And last bit of news for the individuals that are following Ninth Age, it looks like Ninth Age, they put a call out for development team leads as they're transitioning from the design phase of the Army books into development, and recognizing that requires a different skill set. So they are taking applications. And by applications, I mean like actual applications.
Well, that's good. And so, how involved have you been thus far with anything to do with Ninth, and especially like I would have to guess you'd want to get in on the new Bretonian action.
Yeah, so I'm on the content team, which very low bar because I got on it. So if you ever live in the pipe dream that you're not good enough, you are. Trust me. Really, they're looking for people on the content team to evangelize and just put out some content on YouTube or blogs or forums or whatever. So that's been my main involvement. Forum trolling, I think I'm pretty bad at it, but forum creeping is a big thing. I did put in an app for the Kingdom of Aquitaine. I'm glad that I'm not part of the design because I think that's incredibly difficult to do. Anyone who says that isn't a skill set is a moron because it certainly is a skill set to do that. I think that the Phase 2 team, which is the one I applied for, will be a little bit easier because it's really just doing what I do almost in my day-to-day job, kind of, is just aggregating data, right? We're looking at data, we're looking at minor tweaks, we're looking at trends, we're looking at analysis, and just trying to stay on top of that while also doing our own internal analysis among ourselves and among our games. So I think that's where I have more of a strength and a skill set. And I think for somebody who hasn't been involved up to this point, this is a good opportunity. I think it will lean more towards people that have historically been involved, but if you put forward a good app, there's no reason you can't get in. You just need to stay on top of it, and you need to stay involved in it. So this is not the design team was somebody probably who had design experience, who had a very long historical track and had a skill set in design. I can't really define what that skill set is. Vince probably could, but there's that unique skill set. But I think the development team, like I said, is more aggregating data. You have to be involved in the competitive scene week to week. People aren't really concerned about the casual game. They want people to stress test lists. They want people to go, I'm going to put down 45 questing knights, and we're going to see what that does. So it's a good opportunity. We'll see if I get in. It doesn't really matter. I'm pretty happy with how the new Bretonia came out anyway, so I don't have much criticism in that space.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, and I was very happy to see the move toward having a development phase. Tom and I, in our game creation, have always followed a similar thing, and that design has traditionally been my area, and then development is Tom's area. And I thought you broke it down exactly correct. development is really like that stress testing, that aggregation of data. It's that analytics and insight component, right? That's really important because, and keeping them separate is also important because you want your designers to be more free and to try to throw a little more spaghetti at the wall, maybe, and then you want somebody else who's less invested in killing their babies, right? Killing their darlings, to come in and say like, okay, well that's all good. Now let's figure out how we make this all work. So I was very happy to see that division line happen. Awesome. So yeah, definitely more there as it happens. News items and stuff. By the way, to everybody watching, just so you know, we consider anything Warhammer. So if it's 9th Age, if it's AoS, it's all going to be on the news. So we're going to be covering all of that going forward, both in our feature segments and up front and everything, because it's all Warhammer. I'm not picky, and I don't care. I like them both. So there you go.
And if you have Warhammer stories or news stories that you feel like you want to make sure that we cover, especially for those that are on the teams of 9th Age, for those that are doing different comps when they update comps, please let us know when those updates happen, just in case we miss them, so that we can report on them.
Yes, indeed. Like, I'm sure that I forgot something tonight. I have that feeling. And so if you sent me something and I didn't say it, sorry. But there you go. We've never promised quality, just that we will be here with you every week to provide you an hour of painting distraction. That's our guarantee. We will exist. All right. That's the bar we aim for. All right. So that being said, I wanted to add a new segment this week. And the new segment, which we're going to do this week and every week going forward, is we're going to just do a quick video pick of the week. Something we watched on YouTube that we thought was awesome, just to draw attention to other things out there in the community and stuff like that, just channels or videos that I really liked. They probably will most often be Warhammer related, though I'm not going to promise that 100%. So, whatever. There's going to be some times where something just too awesome comes out. But Tom, what was your pick this week?
Man, I have to tell you, they released the new Archaon painting video. GW did. And let me just say that, GW's painting channel is knocking it, or their TV, Warhammer TV or whatever. I don't care about most of it, but their painting videos are knocking it out of the park. Those are they are such helpful videos. The Archaon painting video is an hour and a half.
And that's with the cutaways, right? The constant cutaways.
Yes, Duncan walks you through every step of painting that model.
Yeah.
And it's just a very fascinating, and so for those that are looking at large projects, trying to figure out what you need to do and how you need to paint and what order you need to work on things in, this is just amazingly helpful. He deals with tons of techniques, and it's just it is top to bottom just a fantastic resource. What really grabbed my attention was last year in October, so just over a year ago, was the first one that really grabbed my attention, and it was when they did the mud bases for the Putrid Blight Kings. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, that's a sweet base, and that's what I ended up doing all my Forest Goblins in, was this muddy, marsh, nasty stuff. And I was like, that is awesome. And then, they've just been putting out regular videos that are just fantastic content. So the most recent one was the Archaon video. It was delightful. It was a great watch. And I can't talk highly enough about some of the content that they're putting out. So surprisingly, my pick is actually an official Warhammer video.
How about that? That's amazing. So yes, it is an awesome video. I haven't made it all the way through yet, but I made a pretty deep distance in, and it's very impressive. And to watch that model come together, the reality is, even if you're not buying Archaon, it's just a good painting video that's going to show you a lot of good techniques, right?
Let me just jump in real quick and make another comment. For those that are bitching about GW and about their policies and their approaches, as a side note, let me point out that Duncan is front and center. His name is actually there as the painter. It shows it's a GW video, and then it's he shows up on screen with Duncan, and his name is there. There have been a lot of people that have complained about GWs at what it seems like they've been scrubbing their the public face of any actual personalities. The Black Library books, for example, supposedly don't have the names of the authors on the cover anymore. That was a big thing that a lot of people were complaining about. And they were just saying, like, some of the gripe that I've seen and read recently is that GW is just continuing to be more focused on the IP and the brand and less focused on the personalities. And so I think it's a huge step forward for them to actually have a voice and a face. You know, we talked about this, like what we would do at GW, and one of those is to have a face for the community,
Sure.
even if it's just Duncan painting.
Sure.
But like it is a great step forward, I would say, for GW.
Absolutely. So mine, I'll make it simple and quick, since Tom really rambled there,
I always do.
as he is wanting to do. My pick is Doom and Darkness's latest battle report. Go watch it. It's absolutely hilarious, and you can see the story of the greatest Bestigor that has ever lived, who survived 4 rounds of combat. One Bestigor, 4 rounds of combat with 10 Chaos Warriors. That's all I'm saying. Go see the legend. Reef himself would be proud of this. I'm pretty sure that Vestigor is just Reef, his spirit inhabiting Vestigor form. So it's an amazing and touching tale of a great Beastman hero. There you go.
Was that in Age of Sigmar?
Yeah, it was. Yes.
Okay.
So, all right. Next up, of course, it's time for hobby time. Ant, you've been working on a bunch of stuff lately. What are you working on?
So I committed to do paint up 32 Durendal Knights by the end of the month because I'm a masochist, and I might just paint them all like candy canes and Christmas green, red, and white, because painting 32 individual unique knights on foot just seems like a nightmare. Just seems like the worst thing ever.
Well, that was going to be my question for you. You know, traditionally, obviously, you and I have both done the Bretonnian army, and each knight is his own little unique snowflake, right?
These aren't Bretonians, though. These never existed. So I'm living the dream here, and it's Christmas. Maybe I'll give them some wreaths and stuff from the Empire kit. They brought a lot of Christmas carols, and they bring a lot of hate to people. People don't like the Durendal Knights, so I think they should bring Christmas joy and death.
I'm with that.
And I'm also working on for Malifaux. They released their 3rd book a couple months ago, which is more of their kind of Mordheim campaignish, and there's these emissaries for each faction. The guild has an emissary, and I will shoot you the link of it so you can kind of put it up there. It's basically a guy in a duster with a giant ram head in a cage. He actually looks pretty cool. Okay. I'll email you, Vince, if you want to put it up.
Yeah,
and I'm working on doing. I'm probably going to try to do a conversion of him. The idea being that I'm going to take one of the Death Marshals who has, this guy has a coffin in a cage. So I'll have to add the cage, but there's a coffin on his back. He's got that same duster and everything. I bought a ram head from Reaper Mini. That's hopefully going to come in time, and I'm going to do a head swap, and then I'm going to have to do a cage and put him on a bigger base and just use that as a proxy because they haven't come out with the model yet. And he's OP and broken as shit, so of course I got to have him right now.
Sure.
I can't wait. So I'm going to try to do that.
That's that guy is. So is he that big? Because that's a normal person in that cage, right?
He's on a 50 mil.
Okay,
which is their biggest base.
Yeah, he's like Teddy sized.
Right, and that's a poor. But I'm thinking that's like that's just like a pill case. Like that's not a difficult cage to make, and those are pretty fat bars. You could make that out of a lot of things, I think.
Oh, totally.
And it's just a head swap then and a sword. So I think I can pull it off. We'll see.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that guy is eminently convertible. Yeah, 100%. That is BA. Yeah, I picked up that campaign book actually. Just because we've been talking about like what we want to do as a campaign, and so I was all over that when I saw that was available. Although it didn't add too much that I was too in love with for my for my faction of choice, but that's okay. I like my crews just fine, so no big deal. But that's sweet, good stuff. Tom, what about you, buddy? What are you working on?
Well, back to dwarves. That's happening. So I took a 1-week hiatus after I finished my November pledge, and so now I'm back in December, full bore on my budget of Sigmar. I have 4 gyrocopters coming in, 1 converted over to be a gyro bomber, doing Rune Priest, 2 cannons, a
a lot of dwarves. I mean, they all look the same. What does it really
20
matter?
coralers
Sure.
and a organ gun. So that'll be the month of December.
Gotcha. All right. No, that's good. I still continue to not support this. As we all know, I have firmly stated on multiple occasions that I am against the dwarves.
You don't need dwarves.
I don't believe that it should be done by anyone. But hey, that's okay. You're your own man, and you're free to pursue this folly. Tom, one thing I don't think did we discuss the dwarven rumor at all?
No, we didn't. We didn't.
We need to return back to that. I don't know how we didn't talk about that. I don't know how that slipped our minds for news. But sorry everybody to do this slightly out of order, but I don't want to go on without skipping this. So you doing dwarves triggered it. But yes, the rumor slipped out, to get back to the tinfoil hatting and rumoring, since you're working on dwarves, is that January is going to see the release of a new dwarven book, of a dwarven tome, and new dwarven stuff. And the basic way the rumor shook out was you'll get there's going to be two factions of dwarves, one of which is going to look completely like the old dwarves, like it's the old armor-clad
the steam heads
dwarves, and there's not going to be any new models for that section. It's going to be.
Oh, I don't know if they said no new models. They just said it's going to look a lot like, and it's going to be a lot of re-releases.
In the rumor I saw, they said no new. That half is all repacks. Again, this is all rumor and conjecture. And then the other half is the Fire Slayers, which are a combination of like the Slayers and the Chaos Dwarves, who are now one big, giant, insane mercenary company of death who stomp around killing people and are all infused with the realm of fire.
So I thought they weren't going to do books for Age of Sigmar, though.
Well, I mean, they still put them out at the end. They're just not necessary, right? I mean, that's really what it boils down to. You don't, because you get all the rules for free. So they made the books like, hey, if you want to read about their race, go ahead, knock yourself out.
If you want stories in there. If you want to buy a $200 limited edition book, you can do that. That's basically what the books are.
Yeah, it's for pure collection now, right? They're not necessary to play the game in any way, shape, or form. So.
Yep.
But yeah, so I thought it was fascinating to hear Chaos Dwarfs coming back in the mix.
Yeah.
That excites me.
So let me make an observation that I haven't heard yet, and that is, it seems like we are, and this is a little bit of tinfoil hatting, but it seems like so far we have alternated between Order and Chaos, like fairly systemically, because we did Stormcast, and then I'm talking about like book official releases. We did Stormcast, and we did Bloodborne. Yeah. We did Seraphon, and it looks like we're doing Everchosen next week as the next race, and then that would mean that the Dwarves would come next. And so,
well, if Tzeentch shows up in there, that's really going to throw off your whole plan.
Well, I don't think we're going to get a Tzeentch book. That's the point. Like we're getting an Everchosen book.
Yep.
And I don't think we're going to have a full Tzeentch release.
We'll see. I'm still hoping. Fingers crossed. New Lord of Change. Where you at, you big dumb bird?
So
I'm looking for you.
What's fascinating about this is that we only seem to be getting Order and Chaos. The Advent event is only Chaos. And so it makes me wonder if we'll literally go through all of Order and Chaos before we transition to Death and Destruction.
No. There you go. I just answered your question.
Think so? Okay.
No, because why would we? That would be silly. No, they'll mix it up.
Because they could kick off it with a starter box next summer.
Or they're doing some campaign thing, and they're going to be like, yeah, here, sure, now we're doing this. Like, it's just following whatever the story is, and right now Order and Chaos are leading the spearheads fighting each other. Until here come the orcs. Like, that's what's going to happen. Those insane green idiots are going to just charge in from the side on their new monster trucks, and that's going to be the completely new release, which, by the way, I fully support. Orcs and monster trucks belong in every game, more or less ever. As soon as I said that, Skaven and AZ's on the Q&A just said blarg. That was his response. I take it, Skaven, that you are not a monster truck fan with orcs. That is fine. Personal tastes, I understand. I'll quickly say my hobby time. I'm working on the Chaos Lord on Manticore, so there's the Manticore right there. I don't have the Lord is off somewhere else. Apparently just charging up in the Chaos Wastes.
Are you not doing an ice base on him?
Yeah, I will. Yes, this is his old base he came on. Like I don't buy models new. What's the matter with you? This came with free dirt. Look at that. I didn't pay anything for that. Total savings. Free dirt. No, he's going to get stripped off of that and go on an ice base. But I'm not going to change it before I paint it. Who cares? All right. So let's move on then to our feature segment. All right. So we're going to talk about some proud nails of 8th. Things that we all, I think, as a community, more or less agree perhaps were not as optimal as they could have been. I don't want to say they were necessarily bad or broken, though in some cases they certainly didn't lead to the best time. But, you know, when I remember at the end of 8th, when it sunsetted there, there was lots of videos. We did the thing of, like, the top 10 things wrong with 8th. And the items I'm going to talk about here are the things that we all kind of, that I saw occur on a lot of lists. And then I thought what we'd do is just kind of talk about how these things are being addressed in both the Age of Sigmar and the Ninth Age, because both games are seeking to address a lot of these challenges, and what we think is good about that and what we think is bad about that. This is going to be a positive conversation about both games. The end of this equation is not one of these games are better. That is not the point of this. We are just having an interesting discussion on how the game is evolving on two separate paths, but both are trying to answer the same set of issues and how they're answering them in different ways, which I think is a pretty interesting thing. So, there we go. All right, so let's start out. Problem the first, and boy, I hear this one all the time, in reference to 8th edition. And I don't know if you watched OB's most recent video where he went down and played Knit, and they played an 8th edition game, and like the first thing he said was, "Oh, 8th edition magic phase, there you are again," when like he got fiery convocated, like a whole Beastman gore herd, like zip, burnt off the table. So yes. Problem the first, the overpowered sort of magic phase, right? The death spell, or not death, the lore, death, the fact that these bomb spells can blow up your whole unit. So how do you think Ninth is seeking to tackle the overpowered magic phase problem? And what do you think about it? Successful, not successful? What do you think?
Well, I think Magic's just a lot more risky to take. I think a level 2 is viable. I took a level 2 recently with a scroll versus a Salon, and he got off one spell every phase, as he should. He's the Salon. But I was able to cap most of it, and the one spell I kind of let go every phase wasn't fatal. It was a very different vibe. I think the big issue that comp solved at the end of 8th was 5 dicing stuff. You can only 5 dice stuff. And in 9th, it's 5 dicing stuff, and the spells are a lot weaker, and there's built-in innate protection against characters, like you ignore the first failed roll of the 5+, and you get to pick the order in which those 5+s get rolled. So there's a lot of cover there for that. It might be a little bit too extreme. I think the fantasy component of it is the Magic Phase 1 and 2, the weird dragons and mana cores and shit, right? So the more you strip away the fantasy component of it, the closer you're going to lean towards historicals. And I think that's just the one line they have to tread. But I think right now, after 5+ years with the old Magic system, everyone's pretty refreshed with this one. But again, I don't play an army that relies on magic like the Slann or Undead or something to that extent. So I'm sure those people have a very different vibe on how magic works, because some armies were totally held up by it.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is, like, when I look at the rules, my first thought was, boy, I don't know if I'd really ever more than 2 dice a spell unless it was just like, I'm going to lose the game anyways unless I get this thing off, right? Because the second you cross into like 3 dice territory, like those 3, 4, 5 dice,
yep,
the kickback is so strong if you miscast, right?
Well, you can 3 dice most spells and not worry about dying. So I think the solution will be now 2 level 2s is economically just better than a level 4. And it wasn't like that in 8th necessarily, but with the ability to aid in dispel and casting, now your 2 level 2s are the equivalent of a level 3. They know the same amount of spells. They can double dip out of 2 different lores. You can take 2 different arcane items. They cost less, so if one gets sucked down a hole, who really cares? I got another one. I think all of that combined is bringing back the days of the level 2. And I think another big component was now a Dispel Scroll is 35 points. And it used to be my Scroll Caddy could take a scroll and then take something else that's kind of nice. Now they can't do that as so much because it's 35 points, and it's actually legitimate. It's a legitimate cost, and the cost to go up a level to level 4 is like 60 points across the board for everybody. and it's only 30 points to go to level 2 if you're a level 1, which is just way more economical. So this is going to be the era of like 2-dicing spells, and it's going to come down to just who rolls better.
Well, that's I don't know a better transition to really quick just touch on. So obviously, Age of Sigmar, AoS dealt with the same thing, and it's funny the way that they did it is by sort of making everything just basically 2 dice. Yep. You know, you've got these numbers. They went back to the Mordheim casting system. I mean, that's what it is. If you read it, it's the magic system from Mordheim, right? Spells had a DC. You rolled 2 dice. You got it or you didn't. That's the end of the story, right? And I think what's interesting about it is that on one hand, I'll say this, and I love the ranged to dispel thing. I think that might be my favorite component of it, because I love that you have to decide whether or not you bring your wizards into this range of harm, which lets you dispel, but then 18 inches is a short distance in AoS, and so you can pretty easily get your wizard charged, especially since there's no bunkering, which we'll come to later. So your wizard's got to really think about where he is, and it's on the good side, taking summoning out of the equation. Magic isn't generally incredibly destructive to most units or things. Summoning is a whole different ball of wax, and I'll leave that to the side for the moment. But I think they just, again, Magic was weakened. The problem with it, if there is a problem with it, I think it's this: is that it is very unpredictable. You're not really it's just 2d6. You have very little control. You can't stack the deck in any way, right? There's no.
You can't. Some people can. Like, don't say that you can't, because there are.
I'm talking about the wizard standing alone.
Yeah. But there are some factions that can really just mess with this whole balance. Like this whole toning down thing.
Yeah.
Death is a perfect example of that, and I've trotted that at combo out 100 times in a bunch of different videos.
Sure.
Death is over the top with their casters.
Yep. So I think it's interesting. Both again, this is exactly what I wanted. I think exactly what I wanted to get at. It's funny because both games solved it in completely different ways, right? But we still got to the same place. It was something we all wanted. We went 2 different directions, but we ended up the same place. We're doing a lot of smaller spells that are hopefully impactful to individual fights, right? But not individually winning the game, right? That's the end point we ended up at in both games, humorously enough. All right. Problem the second. And I know this one is near and dear to your heart right here, buddy. Like, this one's for you. And that problem is cavalry sucks. Right? In 8th edition, I think we all know that, I mean, the Bretonnian lance was powerful, but that was the only thing keeping their knights being able to hang at all, right?
Right.
So other cav was more or less a waste.
So I really can't speak for other cav in the game. I mean, I think other cav in the game is still very much in a support capacity, but it does have a unique support capacity, which is what a lot of people said. You can be steadfast, as all the null rules, but if you're disrupted, and disrupted is 1 full rank beyond the first, you can't be steadfast. You can be stubborn, but you can't be steadfast. And stubborn got really stripped down. The Crown of Command now is just a 1-turn thing that you pop. So Cav now has a unique purpose. You take a unit of 10 or 12 Cav, you fly them up the flank, you blow through, you combo that with a frontal charge, and hopefully you break something. In terms of just the walls of meaty death, the 1-up armor save skull crushers, I've heard are not what they used to be, and the Demigurse are certainly not what they used to be, mainly because they got moved to rare. You don't have 4 giant birds or 4 giant beasts locking down a unit of 50 guys anymore. It doesn't seem to be working that way, which I'm very happy with. I can't comment too much on Bretonnia because, again, Bretonnia operates in its own world. The lance only got better in this new update, and that's really Kingdom of Aquitaine specific, and it's getting some hate, which, whatever. But I think Cav found its niche. Cav was never meant to be, I charge into a unit of massive dudes and just annihilate it and blow through it. And Cav should have never been this grinding force. There's this force that comes in on the flank. It's this force that's a supporting element, and it's elite, and it's a small contingent of your army. The 1-up of the Empire, I think, is pretty much dead, where they were all mounted and they were all... and I'm glad to see that.
Do you think so I know you also did some games and a little discussion around, the new Empire book. And I know there was some... I think you were kind of shocked at a couple of, the ways that the new knights shook out as far as like their stats and things like that. Do you think that the new Empire Knights, for example, which were traditionally always very upsetting to Bretonnian players, right? Because they were like, oh, good, they get everything we have but better, exempting the Lance. Do you think they're more sort of appropriate now in their role? Do you think they fill that space you're talking about?
I think they're totally appropriate. I mean, some people are going to be soiled because nobody wanted to have like the old core halberds and stuff. They were just not great models. They didn't rank up well. People, wanted to buy the foot army that Empire always was. It was the Empire of gunpowder and dudes wearing pajamas. And the Empire then got a free pass with a giant unit of Inner Circle core knights led by a bunch of bullshit. And now their core knights suck. I mean, I think they should be weapon skill 4 than weapon skill 3, which is just trash, but they suck and they're bad. And I think they need a little bit of a tweak, but they needed to do that. Otherwise, you have to put the Kingdom of Aquitaine and this Kingdom of Ston all together. You have to let Bretonnia live, which was probably a poorly conceived army. Hey, how about an army of all knights? From a game design perspective, it probably didn't really work. It probably just should have been like a subset, like the Black Templars are of the Imperial Fists. Empire needs to fall on the sword of the Cav department because they have way better magic, they have way better shooting, they have way better across-the-board infantry, they have way better widgets and toys. They can't have anywhere near the caliber of Cav Bretonnia has, otherwise there's just no purpose for it existing.
Yeah. No, I'm with that, and I think that the Empire army looks great when it's the big blocks of dudes. That was my first army way back in '97. Obviously, I had a bunch of those big blocks of dudes, and I remember the introduction of the detachment rule and thinking that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Like, oh my God, I can have other small blocks of dudes to help my dudes.
Well, I think Empire is just going through identity crisis right now because for the past 5 years, they've been taught infantry just across the board sucks. And you don't take it. Even great swords. My friend took great swords because he got a bunch of free ones, but otherwise nobody was taking great swords. Maybe one unit of halberds. So you had an army that was used to one-up armor saves and gunpowder and magic and being very mobile and fast, trying to learn how to do an infantry game again. And playing infantry and playing all mobile is a very different game. So they kind of had an identity crisis for the past half decade, and now they have to kind of learn how to play the way their army was intended to be playing, which is a lot of infantry. So I think, only the most hardcore Empire players are really getting it right now, and I think you're going to see some fall off there because people don't want to buy 120 dudes. Do you think that's not why they picked it up?
Do you think it might move towards more gunline lists?
I mean, they can make a really powerful gunline list, but it's also incredibly easy to get hard cover. I mean, any unit in front of any other unit's hard cover. Nobody did it in 8th because ballistic skill-based shooting was trash, right? So you never had to do it. But, I mean, I could take 5 fast cav, I could take 5 mounted yeomen and put them like this, and sideways, and just push them up the board in front of my guys. I could take 10 skirmishing bowmen for 70 points and get a really mobile unit and just march it in front of my Durendal Knights and go hard cover. I mean, it's not hard to get, so yeah, they can get a unit to ballistic skill 5. They're going to pay a lot of points to do that, and then when something hits it by turn 2, it's useless. So, I mean, I think they're going to have to learn how to play it a new way. Combined arms, that's what Empire was. It was combined arms. It was lots of units that did different things, and you'd have like 1 unit of knights and 1 unit of shooting and 2 units of infantry and then some artillery and then a steam tank. I think that's what you're gonna wind up seeing, but unfortunately a lot of Empire players' collections, unless they were very big or from more than 5 years ago, aren't tooled for this. I think flagellants are the key. That's where I think the Empire hits the core, but nobody who's played Empire prior to 7th edition owns any flagellants.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I'll say as far as the Empire goes, look, if we're just wishlisting it, just bring back Kislev Horse Archers. Let's go. Come on. That's what the Empire's been missing. Big dudes with feathers on their back who shoot bows and arrows. All right. So, it's funny because this is the one thing where like the cavalry thing as it trotted out in Age of Sigmar, I don't know that Cav is any better or worse. Like, because all troops kind of normalized, Cav's now role is just they're really fast. Like, in general, they're often just the fast troops. So, like, they're good for taking objectives because you can move them around. They're really not necessarily more hard-hitting, except on the charge. Could be that's only because a lot of them have special rules that make it so. But because all the stats are so normalized,
Yep.
You know, basically they're 2 wounds. That's their big deal, I guess. That's what they get, right? I think Cav is good, and I think under the right comp systems it can be a very strong choice. But there's plenty of I think this is probably the one where AoS has the weakest answer, in my opinion, because a lot of Cav I don't look at and go like, yep, that's a great thing.
Yeah, like short of the new knights, obviously, which we've kind of talked about, which are bonkers, and aren't really Cav. There's not a lot. Like the most interesting Cav are those that are bringing something that's not Cav related.
Sure. Yeah.
Honestly, so for example, Illyrian Reavers. Man, those things are bonkers now.
Sure.
They are they have a fantastic movement. Plus, they get to move off phase, and they get to shoot 3 times each model, and so they're just all over the place, and they're super shooty, and you're never gonna catch them, that's not that's Cav, but that's not Cav.
Yeah, sure.
You look at Dragon Princes, they're terrible. Yeah.
Sure.
For pound for pound, if I was comparing them to other models.
Yeah, sure. By wounds, by comp score, whatever. Yep. All right, so there you go. It's interesting. I think it's maybe one of those ones where just it didn't that problem didn't necessarily get addressed. So it's strange because cavalry was very bifurcated before. It was either 1-up and great, or just worthless, and now it probably does have a better role. All right, number 3. This is going to be a funny one. Steadfast. So you already touched on this a little, right? Like the idea that you could be just that you'd have these. I think when I think the problems of Steadfast, and I'm sorry, Chris, but it's time for us to come and finally admit to the community that Skaven slaves were a problem. I think we're far enough away. We can now all of us Skaven players can get together and we can collectively admit that our giant buses of 50+ Skaven slaves were not the most fun thing to play against. So, Ant, what do you think about Ninth Age and the fixing of Steadfast?
I think, when you think about why Steadfast was put in, I think from GW's perspective, it was a money grab. How do we take a game that was always about 15, 20-man units and then bump it up to 11? I think Steadfast now in 9th, and its purpose was in 8th, was to plug holes in a game that was relatively immobile. But the issue is now, I think by the end of 8th, armies were so mobile, everybody was so fast, everybody was mounted, that it was very hard for big units, even like Skaven slaves, that were clumsy and cumbersome, and they got in the way of themselves. I think Steadfast now has a new purpose, and that's with the whole sword and board. So now parry is distracted, and distracted's -1 to hit. So imagine Skaven slaves only ever being hit on a 4+. Like that alone takes Steadfast to a new level. So while Disrupted fixes one problem, I think the way parry works, and everybody has access to shields, barring like zombies. I didn't look, but I think slaves have access to shields. Skeletons have access to shields. So think about this: skeletons now, their weapon skill 2, they're still the same, but the fear rule's now -1. So when you're in base contact with a fear-causing unit, you got to take a test, and it's always at -1 when it's a fear causer. Big chance that you're actually now going to fail that.
Right.
It's a higher chance. And now you're hitting them on 5s. Because now your weapon skill 1, weapon skill 2, they have sword and board, now you hit them on 5s. Now you're never getting off that unit. At least before it was a clock, right? It was a penalty. This is going to take 2 rounds of combat, 3 rounds of combat. Now you're stuck. So it's going to be interesting because I think you're going to see a lot of sword and board, and they recognize that. They made shields a cost in most units. You had to pay an extra point or so. But who cares? 50 more points over my 4-point skeletons to be just flat out hit 17% less of the time, all the time, in a world where there's no longer ASF is an enormous change. And I don't know if disruption is going to be enough, because for an experienced player, it's not that hard to keep your units facing front. It's not that hard to protect your flanks with just more buses of bullshit, right? So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the Steadfast problem. I think they fixed it in one major way, but I think the parry mechanism hurts it in a very other way. And it's very obvious now to me, thinking about the game, but when, Vince, you talk about game design, they're in 2 totally different segments of the book.
Right.
Maybe designed by 2 totally different groups of people, and then they clash. And you don't know that till you test. But we're in beta, and that's why it's good to expose this now and kind of bring that forward, and you know, we just need playtesting to see how much of a problem it's going to be.
Yep, I agree. And by the way, Skaven and AZ promptly responded, never, with a huge amount of exclamation points, like all the exclamation points that he will never admit that his Skaven slaves were anything less than super fun to play against. And also, Plastic Sturgeon said the Empire Swordsmen were class in 8th. I like it. Yes, they were classy. I'll give you that. They were. I always liked that model. You stay classy, Empire Swordsman. All right. So this is one of those things that's very funny to me because, like, so to take us back over to the AoS world for a minute.
Steadfast what?
Steadfast what? But immune to battle shock. They made it so like one unit basically becomes sort of unbreakable, right? And then everything else, in most cases, everything else on the board just starts bleeding, right? So like when you get in fights, everything just bleeds, as opposed to a unit completely snapping, which is what Steadfast was attempting to stop, right? Steadfast was changing that 7th edition dynamic of like, guys charge in, guys kill the front 5, win combat by 5, you're on leadership 2, you break, you run, we win. You never swung or fought, right? And that was the 7th edition problem. And so now it's like your units don't break and run anymore. Instead, they just slowly bleed dudes as they start to flee, and then eventually, if you really get blown up, they just, they're all going to run because you're going to have nobody left. I have to say, good and bad to me. On one hand, it's interesting because you can have situations where people won't break. So the story I told earlier about the corn, the Cornagor or whatever in Doom and Darkness, this thing, right? Whereas this one guy fighting 10 Chaos Warriors for 4 rounds of combat, didn't die, didn't run. That's just not a world you're going to live in, in sort of with the old where you can break. But that one guy can never take a battle shock test in AoS, right? So it let this very funny situation occur. Good side. Downside, you don't get to feel that sudden switch, right, of like when you do break an enemy unit.
The momentum of the game changes.
Right, yeah, that was definitely a thing, right? Like, I know, I mean, it didn't happen often, but I'm sure you love a well-executed double lance charge into a rather nice unit when it actually works. I mean, this was your bread and butter. This is the Savage Beast Assault, where these dudes just go in and clean clocks, And there's something that was really rewarding about that, and watching that unit snap and having you run them down. I will admit, I'm sad to see that go.
I really like the way that they have in Age of Sigmar units fade. I think the best blend would be both. I think some fading should always occur. When you lose big, but you still hold because you're steadfast, I believe there should be still some bleeding. I don't know how that math and mechanism would work. Because routes, if you think, and you don't want to really make it historical, but routes, when you think about it, they came in bursts. It wasn't everybody synergizing their walkie-talkie. We're all going to break now. Right? There's guys in the front or the flanks dying. There's some people stepping up. There's some people hesitant. There's some people in the back that get scared and book it. And I think the bleeding out kind of represents that. Yeah, some guys do step up, but a whole bunch left because they were like, fuck this, I'm not partaking anymore. Right. The whole breaking mechanism is like, I lost by 1, and I blew my leadership role, and the whole unit went away. It just doesn't make sense. But I would say, like, on a really good cav charge or something really catastrophic, a unit could just completely disintegrate. I think there should be some more testing there. And I think it's a hard thing to nail because a lot of games seem to either do the bleed out or they seem to do the, completely snapping. But I think the middle ground for success may be something more in the middle.
Taco Girl.
Yeah, exactly. It's Taco Girl. Why not both? Yeah, I agree. No, that's really cool, and it's funny because this is exactly like I hadn't even considered the advantage of having both together until we discussed this. But as you were describing that, I was like, yeah, that's exactly how it would work, and that would be awesome. Like, I love that idea. So there you go. All right, next up. I don't know if we'll do my whole list because I had a lot, by the way, people. So if there's a particular Proud Dale of 8th that we don't talk about that you hated, I apologize. I know that I have more, but I don't want to keep us here until 11 o'clock discussing the problems. So, all right. Next up, monsters suck, cannons rule. There you go. That's the problem, right? I mean, it's what you said. Like the idea of fantasy is these sweet dragons and idiots like this thing. Did you ever see this guy on the table? This was not a model that was
No.
on the table, right?
No, unless it was Swedish and someone was really trying to dick the rest of their list, but then needed comp points. It was like,
Right.
where are my giants? Where's my mana core? Because they're like 1 or 2 comp points in Swedish, and they cost a lot of points. Yeah, that was their gambit. I on paper, what they did with cannons looks really good. D3 +1 is ordnance. It's +2 if you're flying, because they want to really punish monsters that are super mobile because they're a big risk. Really, it's just hitting the middle of the road. D3 +1 is going to average out to 3 wounds. It's a little bit worse for flying monsters at 4 wounds. So it's not taking away it's taking away the extreme of the curve for the damage point on the cannon. I don't fully remember all the cannon rules because I've never had a cannon in the past couple of years, but I mean, they're nowhere near as accurate. They're more expensive, and they're in rare. Like an Empire, anything that's artillery is in rare, and it competes with the steam tank, and it competes with the Negriffs. So it makes it really hard to take them. And I do have concerns about this. The Charm Shield still exists. 4-up wards still exist. Flying monsters still exist. They don't just fly flat 20. There's a number on there now, but it's not that much lower for a Demon Prince than what it was before. A Demon Prince flying 16 is still just about as scary as one that flies 20. Very few instances where that delta is going to really come into play. And it seems that fantasy has always struggled to balance monsters versus the things that kill them at range. And that's, I think, going to be a problem here again. I think the ball's a little bit more in the middle of the court. But, I mean, an Empire army that has 2 cannons now, that's all they're going to have. They can't have 3. And that means they're not going to have a Demigriffs and Steam Tank in that same list at 2,400, 2,500 points. So now you're talking about these 2 cannons need to kill all the monsters, or at least the propensity of them, because without a Steam Tank and Demigriffs, what are they going to kill it with? Strength 3 Knights? Foot Infantry? I mean, they're not going to... Magic that's been toned down, they're not going to kill it. So there's definitely... I definitely feel a concern there that for certain armies the pendulum could swing a little too far, and I don't know if enough physical math has been done to fix cannons. I think it's going to take a long time for them to grind that stone. I don't miss them because I didn't have them, but again, I have mechanisms to kill them in combat. So I think that's now going to have to be the answer for monsters is, do I not take artillery and just try to kill them in combat? The other big elephant in the room is with deployment now. Whoever wins the roll to go first, we alternate units, but I can decide to drop as many units as I want. And I think what a lot of people are going to do right away is just drop their whole army. I'm going to try to win the roll to go first. Try, meaning I'm going to roll a dice and hope I roll higher than you. I don't think there's a mechanism in there to bump your roll up initially. And I'm going to drop my whole army. And then however many units you have in your army, that's how much I get to my plus roll to go first.
Right.
So if I win the roll to
you
go
can really almost effectively go first automatically.
I will auto go
cases.
first. And the deployment game is interesting with certain armies, but I think a lot of armies are going to make themselves deployment immune. I was deployment immune, and it wasn't just because I was Bretonnia. I was deployment immune with pretty much all my armies. You build your list, you lay it out on your table, and you go, this is going to work. And just the ability to know you're going to go first. And if you're bringing a lot of flying monsters or a lot of big monsters, think lizardmen, think demons, think a lot of things, and knowing you're going to get the first turn and the cannon's going to get maybe 1 round to shoot at you, 2 rounds maybe before you hit the lines, and knowing what the other army can't take because they're competing for each other in that same slot, I think is going to allow monsters to be pretty good. So it's going to come down to, do people adjust to killing monsters in combat? Can army books kill monsters in combat? So we'll see.
Yeah, do you think it matters that monsters basically have a rank now? Do you think that adds anything extra to them as well, that like a monster actually counts as a rank?
Well, I think it hits cavalry. I mean, that's the big thing. It's not infantry blocks. It's cav. It's a unit of 10 or 12 cav now is going to lose because they're going to get hit. They're not going to be steadfast. And it just comes down to the delta of how much they lose combat by. Monster cav that gets slammed into by a dragon is going to lose. Demigriffs might only lose 1 model, but they don't have a rank to stand by anymore. And I don't think cav should almost border on never having ranks. Outside of Bretonnia, and only because the mechanism of ranks and steadfasts and the way it exists needs ranks, cav should never have ranks. It was never about a horde of dudes. It was about super fast, super elite, super mobile punches. So I'm totally fine with them having a rank. It does not screw over infantry, really. Very rarely will it. It just really mucks with cav. And if you're playing a cav unit and you didn't get the charge, shame on you. You know, you didn't apply the unit correctly.
Yeah, good stuff. I think it's interesting, and because, you know, let me pivot here real quick, and I want to go back to something in your video on the Empire review, just to go back to that again. So the new Steam Tank, right? It has like a table of functionality, right? The more damage it takes, the less effective it gets, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so what I thought was funny was I was like, when I listened, I hadn't read the Empire 9th Age book before I watched your video, and I read that and I was like, oh, well, I'm glad to see that a good idea from AoS snuck into this design, right? Because that's what that is. That's that decreasing monster table, right, out of AoS, and it just, I mean, it is a good idea. Say what you will about the overall game, the one idea to me from the actual troop design that I think is something that always should have been there was that decreasing quality of the monster the more damaged they become. I love it because the problem with monsters was always a monster at X wounds being its maximum or 1 wound being its minimum is just as effective, right? But a block of troops that maybe cost the same amount of points at its max troop count is not as effective as the block of troops at 1 guy, right? I mean, that's fairly obvious. There was so 1 operated at 100% efficiency until death, and 1 definitely fell off fast. And I think this was just the admission of that. I think this is one where I do love what Age of Sigmar did with monsters in ramping their wounds way to high hell and back, but giving them this hard, sharply decreasing table, and in most cases actually not making them very tough. Like, it's pretty easy to just pile onto a giant with a horde of goblins and bring him down, which, other than being a hilarious image of all those little green dudes just stabbing him in the ankles, I mean, it's very Gulliver's Travels. I think it makes for a fun game because it lets you use your big stompy toys without necessarily ruining it for everybody else, which I think is solid. So in this case, I think both are probably actually really, they're both, like I said, it's not comparison, but I think they're both good solutions. And I think they both got at the same place, which is we want to play with these monsters, but we're always riding some kind of line. Right? Of like, it needs to. This isn't. We want to play with monsters, but this isn't Monster Mash. Like, that's not what we want. We don't want the let's have all monsters on the table. That's not the game we're playing. So, and that's always a tough line to walk. All right. So this one I'll be interested in because I don't know as much about this one in 9th Age. I haven't looked into it as deeply because none of the armies I really care about do this a lot. So maybe you can help me out here, Ant. And that's ballistic skill shooting sucks. So, obviously this is a thing in 8th, right? I mean, like, outside of, I guess, like, Wood Elves, probably, right? And you fought 200 Tomb King's archers. Did you think that was that scary?
I mean, I think ballistic skill-based shooting still sucks. I would almost say I'd rather lock... This, I think, was their opportunity to lock into, now that I think about it, a hard-to-hit number. And I know that's, again, an homage to Age of Sigmar. But there is... Or
40K, really. I mean,
or 40K.
Yeah.
But there's a number that it's effective and it's not effective. And if you're thinking about selling models or making something viable, there's a big debate on the Wood Elf forum part of the 9th Age saying, our archers suck. Because if you remember archers in 7th edition, take away all the marching, blocking shenanigans. Wood Elf archers at close range were strength 4. Wood Elf archers could move and shoot. Wood Elf archers ignored armor or got killing blow on their Way Watchers, things of that nature. That all doesn't exist anymore in 9th Age. 9th Age has its Fey arrows, but it doesn't have the hit on a 3+ all the time arrow. There's one negative in there. The Way Watchers have access to all the magical arrows, but they're no longer just flat out ignoring armor. It's just a -3. So, a 1-up goes to a 4-up. That's not very good when you add toughness into it. So now here's the most elite archers in the game being fundamentally worse in 9th than they were in 8th and being the same cost. Tomb King archers are still really good. Now they can hand out ballistic skill 3 on command. There's an item that a king can take and hand out his ballistic skill, which makes them better, but it's still just ballistic skill 3 shooting. and it's still just strength 3 shooting at 2-foot range. Whoop-de-friggin-do unless you get the spell off to double tap. I think ballistic skill-based shooting should have more of a purpose in this game. I think it needs to be a viable supplement to say, I'm going to take that 40-man unit down to 20 and then be able to beat it with my smaller MSU block. I think that that's where everybody really loved this game, was with the block sizes and unit sizes of 7th. I don't think anybody was excited about 50-man and 100-man units. Nobody was excited to paint 50 and 100-man units. That's why you saw unit filler all over the place. People like a 20-man block. You can make unique guys and all this other stuff, and it allows the game to be more mobile. And that's where shooting was scary, because if you killed 5 guys, that's 25% of the unit. Now I got to kill 10 guys. It's 25% of the unit, but it doesn't really mean as much anymore. I still have my full rank bonus. I still have my full attacks. I still have my full everything. So I think ballistic skill-based shooting is still not that good. I think they're afraid of making it better because it's fantasy and it's about the hand-to-hand. But again, you have a faction in the Wood Elves where that's their whole shtick. You have a faction in the Tomb Kings where that was a big component. I think Tomb Kings are fine. But now the Wood Elf players are saying, why would I take any Glade Guard? I just won't. When I think about lists there, I won't take Glade Guard. I may not even take Way Watchers. The foot infantry is better. Who the hell would have ever said that for Wood Elves, that the foot infantry is better than the shooting? I think that book had an identity crisis, and again, that's another way out there in left field book. It's like Bretonia. If you make it too good, the Wood Elves dominate. If you make it bad, the Wood Elves don't exist in this world. They're the third elven book and kind of live in this world of weird. What do you do? And I don't know how they're necessarily going to solve for that without somebody losing out. Bretonian Wood Elves, you try to make them good, the rest of the armies get upset. You don't make them good with the cav and the shooting rules. They don't exist in the game. So it's a unique challenge that they're unfortunately stuck with after GW walked away from the way they were doing fantasy.
It's interesting because I think it's always been ballistic skill shooting, even back to my earliest memories, were always underwhelming in most cases. Like I made the joke about the Kislev horse archers earlier, which by the way occurred in the Empire Army book of like 4th Ed, or one of those books. It was like, hot tip: Kislev horse archers can harass the sides of your enemy's forces and flanks. And it was like, no, that is a lie, Games Workshop. 5 idiots who are ballistic skill 3 who take all the normal penalties for doing everything and have strength 3 16-inch range bows do not a harassment force make. So I'm very angry at the 1992 writer of that book. I would just like to point that out. 23 years later, I've held a grudge. But it's just never been that great, and I wonder if maybe this is something that occurred to me off of what you were saying, is the problem that we've never made the difference about the type of unit you're shooting at. And by that, what I mean is, like, when I think of like bows and arrows in classical warfare, right? They were really effective against certain types of units or certain sort of kits, people armed in particular ways, and very ineffective in every other case, right? And
so you're saying like the non-shield wearers?
Sure, yeah, like if you're shooting at non-shield wearing infantry, or the difference between having shields and not having shields. I think of like, you think of like when Achilles and his boys are moving up on the beach and they all put up that little turtle shield wall and the arrows are just raining in and killing nobody, and then they charge out and stab everybody to death, versus just like what you see when people don't have shields in movies where they just get slaughtered, right? Or like if you're shooting at a monster and it's just a big giant target, the old +1 to hit and making,
But that was a quantity. But it's not the killing. If you wound, killing the models a pretty high chance. Nobody has a great save walking around. What's the best save? 4 up and you're really heavy. I mean, most guys have a 5 up, 6 up save, and people will tell you, it's only because the base model comes with it. I would never buy that kind of save because it's not going to save very much. It's the hitting and the wounding. And I mean, the way ballistics kill people has never changed. I think they did an analysis, like it takes thousands of bullets. In World War II, it took thousands of bullets per person killed. They just shot a lot of bullets. And like a longbowman could get off like 12 arrows in a minute, like a well-trained one, and he'd shoot one straight, and then he'd shoot one up, and then he'd shoot one straight, and shoot one up. And it was hundreds, if not thousands, of dudes shooting multiple shots in a minute. that just drowned the fucking field. And in this game, it's one shot, one dice. So I'm going to get 6 shots a game. That's pathetic. A corn champion gets 6 attacks if equipped appropriately. And I get 6 shots a game. Like, that's a Way Watcher. Like, when they had the multiple shot was cool, but like a Way Watcher should be shooting like 4 to 5 times with the current shooting rules to be like, wow, that's really scary, because that's what they put out. If you look at ballistics, if you look at the shooting of a unit as attacks, right, it needs to be based upon the attack profile. So when you look at that champion of the Chaos Warrior unit with 2 hand weapons marked to corn rocking out like 4 attacks base, right, you pay for those attacks. But ballistic skill-based shooting in Fantasyland has always been more expensive, and it hasn't been, wow, that's a really good archer, they get multiple shots. They get more shots. So I think just making more, you either make more shots or you roll less dice and you make hitting easier. Whatever the percentage target you want to mathematically hit, you just make that happen. And I think that's what they need to do. They need to find a way to either things hit a lot more often, and we still roll 1 dice to represent all the shots that archer's taking in that turn or that handgunner's shooting, or you throw a lot more dice and you keep the mechanism the same. Otherwise, right, I don't see people keeping it, and then you have the huge detriment of in combat. A lot of the good archers had shields, they had axes, they had something to defend themselves. The Persians had like a shield, and then they had like a spear. Like the Immortals had I think they had bows or something like that. I mean, a lot of units had something that they could then stand in melee, and that would be a scary unit. Remember Iron Drakes from 8th?
Sure.
That was a terrifying unit.
Yep.
Because you got into combat with them, and they were still really scary.
They're still dwarves. Uh-oh, we've attacked them and found out they're still dwarves.
They're still dwarves in 4-up armor, and because their range was so short that they were normally not taking cover penalties, they normally were not taking move and shoot penalties, and when they were hitting on their flat ballistic skill, it was like, whoa, I lost 5 or 6 dudes, 10 shots.
I'm painting those next month.
And this is funny because I think that this is, you're right, it's always been a tricky thing. Both editions have tried to answer it to some degree. Every edition of Warhammer has tried to answer this to some degree. And when I look at what Age of Sigmar did, again, I don't think it's been the most popular answer, right? Like, what happened? Well, you can shoot all the time now, right? Even in combat, your guys still get shots. Now, there are a lot more units that do have multiple shots or stuff like that, and because the numbers got flat, it is doing that thing you're talking about where it's like, well, they hit on 4s and wound on 4s, and most of these troops, yeah, they can shoot even when they're in melee, but most of them suck in melee. But that whole thing of like being able to shoot sort of whenever you want every turn, regardless of whether or not you're fighting, definitely has been something that has raised a lot of consternation. And you really can, there are some armies that can have these forces that are they just put out all heat in the air, to the point where it's so overwhelming, it's not fun. It's the worst of the gun line syndrome, right? Yeah. Because now there is no, like you said, hard cover. There's no, I can't take that. I can go get +1 to a save if I go stand somewhere, right? But that's my option. And so it makes it so you kind of have to have this gentleman's agreement of, well, pip, sir, let us both agree that we will take a reasonable amount of shooting only, to be defined later what reasonable amount is. Shall we say 30 shots? 30 shots aside. And it's just like, it's fine, we always self-govern when we play these games, but it's a shame that nobody can get this equation right. It's never completely perfect because there's something less fun about it. Like you said, it's a game about combat. We're not playing 40K. We don't just want to stand around and shoot laser guns at each other, right? And there's something seemingly less fun about just getting like mowed down and having nothing to respond to or do about it. But if you're the guy mowing people down, you'd like to actually be decent at that thing.
Well, I think like when I think about the Bretonnian archers, the peasant bowmen in Age of Sigmar, that rule where if you took, I think, 30 or more, you get the one-time arrow storm, you get 120 shots. You think about the Hail of Doom arrow, the one-time 3d6 shots. That's a reliable item that once a game is going to do something dramatic, and it's worthwhile. It would give, if shooters had that one-time blow your load kind of thing where I can take the shots that I would have taken over 6 rounds of the game in one round, round 1, round 2, I get to pick it, it would make them more viable. It would also make Cav more viable because then Cav have a purpose. Cav are awesome at fighting skirmishers and fighting ballistic skill-based shooters.
Yep.
Flying up quickly, getting in there. They're fast and they're heavily armored, so they can dink a lot of the shots off. That gives Cav units of a small size, or even a medium size, a purpose, other than I have to slam frontally into this block, or spend all game trying to navigate this flank to then disrupt somebody late in the game when it probably won't even matter. I think that's kind of the mechanism they need to throw in there. Or even earlier in the game, you get more shots, and then as the game goes on, you get less shots, depleting ammo. Do something, to that extent. But they need to crank out more damage, however you want to do it.
No, that's interesting. I think that's a really good point, that by making these sort of archers or skirmishers better, you also give Cav a real home and thing to do. And you're right, because a good unit of heavy 1-up, 2-up Cav, I always thought I loved seeing little skirmishing blocks of archers on the table with my Bretonnians, if they were just kind of out there. That's a thing that we're going to plow through and just not even look back. Right? That's a joke. That if there's arrows, we'll fight in the rain. Right? I mean, occasionally a Knight of the Realm accidentally takes one in the eye of the hole of the helm, but other than that, you're just giving that the laugh.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see. I think we got one more in us. We got one more. All right. So this is another one I think I'm curious about. I want to get your opinion on. I certainly have my own, and that is Death Stars. This was always, I know OB talked about this one a lot. I know this was the big one for him. Death Stars, packing 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 points to your army. I remember at the end of 8th, there was a battle report OB threw up where there was like a Chaos Army that had 2,250 points of its 2,500 points in one unit, right? And I'm like, oh, God, that's pretty terrible. So what do you think? How is 9th Age sought to address Death Stars?
I think they can still do it. I don't know if I can take credit, but I'm going to take credit for getting rid of the character walls and getting rid of Savage Beasts, at least, if nothing else, with what I did with Bretonnia. But you can now attack the unit, regardless of how many characters are in it, even if you're not touching any. I think that's a good change, and it gets rid of the character wall necessity. And a lot of the spells that were in, what was that, Beasts? God, I can't remember. Beasts, where it gave buffs to toughness and strength and things of that nature, don't exist anymore. The +1 strength and toughness across the board for the unit exists, but that's not really a boon for characters. And with characters losing ASF, like the Vampire Blender Lord now, he can hit on a 2+, but no more rerolls. That's not as scary of a unit. So a lot of times when I'm thinking about putting a character into my army, I'm like, he's so expensive, and he's not very reliable because he doesn't get the reroll mechanism. I could just do better with this elite unit here. I'd rather take 5 Grail Knights than take a Bretonnian Lord. That's just a better investment. So I think some characters have been devalued. However, you can still totally do Death Stars. I mean, even though they've capped units at 30 and 40 and whatnot, you can still totally do Death Stars. My Questing Lance can still be, 12 guys at 500 and something points, and they can have a 3-up ward against shooting and a 4-up ward all the time, and I can just load that full of as many characters as I want. That's the big thing for the Aspirant Knights in the Kingdom of Aquitaine. Those guys they roll 46 and take the 3 highest on their first charge. So that's a delivery unit for however many characters I want to throw in there. I don't think it'll be a long-term strategy, but it'll work. I think right now less characters is the better build and more bodies, but I do see that some character builds are going to sneak through and you're still going to have some Death Stars. I think that's where missions and other things can come into play, but the bomb spells were meant to take out the Death Stars. Now that the bomb spells don't exist anymore, you really have to make sure there are no Death Stars, and if there are Death Stars, you need to find ways to fix them. And I think we fixed them well enough right now. A year from now, when people try to crack the egg, we'll have to say.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right about the nature of kind of that thing that what the big bomb spells answered, right? They were always the sort of mutually assured destruction. We all have this weapon. Don't do that. And that is good. And now that that's gone, you're right. It's if any sneak through, there's not a lot of answers for them, right? There's just not a lot of things that can answer it. If one side has a Death Star, there's no other tools. So that's interesting. When I think about Age of Sigmar handled this in a very funny way, in that there's death clouds now right? So you can't have like there's no Death Star because there's no characters don't join units. Those people are just walking around. But when I think of like the Beastmen, they form up like a death cloud where like the shaman's giving a buff and the beast lord's giving a buff and the units are buffing each other, and it's just like, and here's this death cloud marching across the table, just slowly trying to get where it's at, or quickly in some cases. And I will say I don't hate that as much, because the other big thing that you mentioned that's my favorite change from ninth is I can always get at the unit, right? Yep. I can get at that unit. I can attack what I want. And that is always all that bothered me the most. And both games answered that to my satisfaction. That if I want to fight the unit, I want to fight the unit. If I want to fight the character, I want to fight the character. You know, when these things smash together, let's have a punch up with the things that I want to get in a punch up with. You attack who you want. I'll attack who I want. Let's see who wins.
The components are always available, and I think that that's really the key, at least with Age of Sigmar, because like characters are very vulnerable. Anybody that's handing out buffs is very vulnerable to ranged combat. Is right. Very vulnerable to siege, and like that's a lot of people question like why put siege in, and the answer is because you can 2-round characters that are standing around.
Or one if you get lucky, yeah.
Yeah, or one if you get lucky. And the reality is that Death Stars, in my opinion, I think they've been fixed in Age of Sigmar. Like it is a non-issue because it's all functioning differently, and it's especially because you're not combining things.
Right. If nobody's actually getting together. On one side, like on the flip side of that, for the downside, is that you can't have, like, you can have your guy marching around behind and like yelling at them or haranguing them, but there is something really awesome that's that image, right, of the troops that have the character sitting up there in the front, like, you know, leading them on to glory.
Hey, you can still put the model in the middle of your cloud.
That's a good point. You can put them however you want.
Like, if you want your Necromancer in the middle of your block of zombies, untouchable by melee, you can do that. Like, that's a thing based on the movement. Like, you can wrap a cloud around a character.
Sure.
Now, that's still not going to protect him from spells and still not going to protect him from ballistic shooting or shooting.
That's a good point. You've got me on that one, Tom. I will give that to you. All right. Well, we've reached our hour and a half with this rambling discussion. I think the take-home point for me is both of these are newest iterations of our favorite game ever, and obviously something that has absorbed much of our lives, you know, is always trying to evolve. They're all trying to evolve and solve issues. But I hope what we've sort of talked about and shown is that a lot of these things have good and bad, right? And it's exactly what you said at the very top. Like, this design is challenging, and nothing's ever free, right? There's always going to be some good, some bad. You put it in, you give it a shot. Does it actually make it better? No. Okay, let's go from there, right? And that kind of thing. So, Ant, any final thoughts this evening, sir?
No, I think it's incredible how close the games are in terms of design, just some minor tweaks, but how incredibly different they are at the same time. So.
Yeah, isn't it funny how just a few tiny levers can move the world? Yeah, it really is true. Yeah. All right, Tom, any final thoughts there?
No, got nothing.
All right, fair enough. That's very exciting. All right, well, my final thoughts are thusly. Thank you all very much for watching. We super appreciate it, and always an absolute honor and a pleasure, sir, to have you on. We love having you. To all of you out there, thank you for watching. All the links for the stuff I mentioned at the top of the show, including the videos we talked about, will be down below, so certainly check those out. And as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.